Welcome to the first event of our Black History Month series, Still I Rise. Can anybody, let's see, for a $50 Visa gift card, could anybody tell me who wrote that poem? Raise your hand. Oh, disqualified. Can anybody tell me, let's see here, would anybody like to come up and answer a few trivia questions and earn a $50 Visa gift card? Going once? Okay, come on up, young man. Who's the author of Their Eyes Are Watching God?
Honestly, I am unsure.
Name 3 books that Toni Morrison has written.
I apologize, I am unsure.
Okay, sweet potato pie or pumpkin pie?
Sweet potato pie.
Okay, I'll give it to you at the end of the event. Anybody else? Come on up. How are you doing? Good. Who was the first Black opera singer to sing at the Lincoln Memorial at the request of Eleanor Roosevelt?
Oh, no.
Okay. All right, let's think of another one. Since Jesmyn Ward's from Mississippi, what Mississippian civil rights leader is known for the infamous quote, "I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired"?
Oh, y'all gonna get me canceled. I don't know. I'm sorry. Morrison question.
Okay. All right, let's try one more. Okay. Salt or sugar and grits?
Salt. Sugar?
Okay, so who says salt? Raise your hand. Okay, who says sugar? Oh, so salt won. So you win. Okay. Anybody else? Anybody else want to answer any questions? Come on up. Okay, who wrote the acclaimed memoir, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings?
Oh my gosh. I didn't know that.
Okay. Name one book that James Baldwin has written.
Oh my gosh. I know, I can see it. I don't know.
Who was the first daytime TV talk show host to own her own production studio?
Oprah?
Yes, very good. You want to say that?
Oprah?
Okay, so I have your gift for you by the end of the event. So, yes. Okay. Very good. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and get started with the event. I'd like to acknowledge a colleague of mine, Mr. Trevor Dawes, and thank the University of Delaware, their library. They co-sponsored the event. I'd like to thank you all for coming. I'd like to thank the staff for their hard work. So give the Wilmington Library staff a round of applause. And with further ado, I'll introduce the moderator of our event. I'm sorry, I'm a little tongue-tied. It's been a long day. I'd like to introduce our moderator. He's a professor at the University of Delaware. I'd like to introduce Dr. Roderick Carey. Please approach the platform.
Good evening, everyone. I'm not who you came to see. So, if you open up your Jesmyn Ward book in the back, there is an extensive bio of Jesmyn. I'm not going to read that for you because we want to get to this genius. She is here. We are ready. And I just want to say it is my extreme honor to be here to build with you all. And ladies and gentlemen, Jesmyn Ward. All right, here we are. So, first of all, happy Black History Month, everybody. You made it. We're here. So, the first thing I want you to do is do this. The next thing I want you to do is do this. Next thing, well. Next thing, I know that's right. And then the last thing I want you to do is applaud again for Jesmyn Ward. What a great way to start off Black History Month. Our month of remembrance, of celebration, of sharing, of fellowship. And we are here with this Black literary icon. I am so excited to be here. Jesmyn, welcome to Wilmington, Delaware.
It's good to be here. Thank y'all for having me.
Have you ever been to Wilmington before?
I don't think so.
All right. All right. Well, we are so happy to have you here, and we've welcomed you with billboards, and I've seen signs on roads and everything. We are so thrilled that you are here. Jesmyn, you have offered us some amazing work with Where the Line Bleeds, Navigate Your Stars, The Fire This Time, a powerful memoir called Men We Reaped, Salvage the Bones, and Sing Unburied Sing. But tonight we are here to discuss your latest offering, The Gripping Let Us Descend. Our time is so limited, so I just wanted to dive right in, and I don't want to spoil the main twists of this book for those of you who haven't read it yet. So what is the book about?
That's always like one of the most difficult questions to answer. But I guess action-wise, it follows this young woman who is enslaved as she is sold south from the Carolinas and is made to walk down to the slave markets, which they would call slave pens of New Orleans. And then she, ends up in a plantation sort of in that area, right? But at the same time that it's about that physical journey, it's also a spiritual journey,
absolutely.
Because she encounters spirits on the way.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel it's like some of your other work. At first, I was like, "Is this a ghost story?" But it's not. It's spirits. Tell us a little bit about why you incorporated the spirit element in your book.
I think one of the reasons that I did it is because I feel like, one, it was too difficult for me to write this as a straightforward narrative, like rooted in realism about what an enslaved, person like Annis would have gone through. And then, two, I thought that incorporating spirits into Annis, that's the main character's name, like into her life and into her journey, I felt like that's truer to who we are as a people and who we've been since the beginning. Because, I don't know, I think that our spirituality is one of those things that has enabled us to not only survive in this country, but also to thrive. And so I wanted Annis's story to reflect that.
So, it's the beginning of Black History Month, and like so many of the folks in this audience, in school, we only learn about ourselves right around now, and if we do, it's about slavery, civil rights movement. But you offer us a book that's set during slavery, but you offer us a far more visceral account, even a reimagining. And I want to share something with you. So what you all don't know is before we come down here, there's a green room upstairs, and we were in what's called the John Dickinson room. Any John Dickinson high school alums up in here? All right, we got one. All right. So John Dickinson was the signer of the Declaration, a very, very important figure here in the state of Delaware. He had a plantation 5 miles south of Dover. And my dad, Harmon Carey, at the time was involved in the Division of Historical and Cultural Affairs, and they were interested, this was about 35 years ago, in redoing the property, the land. There were no plans to rebuild the slave quarters. But John Dickinson owned over 100 people, and my dad agitated and advocated, and they eventually built these quarters, which is now a central piece of the exhibit. Jesmyn, there is such a resistance to discussing slavery in accurate ways. And given that so much of our history, we as Black folks, often begin our lives in the United States with slavery discussions, what new lessons or new insights about our past condition or present do contemporary novels set in slavery offer us? What types of stories should we be writing about slavery?
I realized pretty early on when Annis came to me, right, the main character, and when I realized that I had to write a story about this girl who was enslaved, I realized pretty quickly that I knew nothing about slavery. I'm pretty sure that y'all learned more than I did in high school about, the system of American slavery. Like, I learned basically nothing. But then again, I grew up in Mississippi, right? I don't think I took a unit on Mississippi history. I took, world history. I took U.S. history, and it was just not taught, and we just didn't learn about it. And so I basically read for 2 years, right? And I read everything not everything I could get my hands on, but I read a lot until I felt like I got to a point where I knew enough about the world then, the way that it looked, the way that it operated, to where I could begin to tell this story, right? But one of the things that I feel like I learned when I was, during my reading and during my research, is I realized how our ancestors resisted at every step, right? Their lives were suffused with resistance. And I think the way that, slavery is taught, right? The way that the history of slavery is talked about, we're taught, there was a revolt here and there was a revolt there, and sometimes people ran away and that was it, right? That's the totality of resistance. But in my reading, I learned that that's not true, right? That's a flat rendering of how people who were enslaved, of how they resisted that system, right? So yes, they revolted, they ran away, but they also broke tools. They stole, food. They created family, right?
Yeah,
when they were
real.
Separated from their family, they created community, right? They, did what they could to work at their own pace and during the work that they had to do. The people that ran away, they didn't all flee north. Sometimes they lived on the borders of the plantations, right? And tried to start sort of semi-self-sufficient communities. The people who were still enslaved on the plantations would trade with them, the people who lived on the borderlands. And so, resistance, there are so many different forms of resistance. And I think that was one of the most sort of valuable things that I learned. And I think I'm really grateful that I discovered that, because I think it changes that, that idea that you have in your head when you don't know much about slavery, right? When you're like, I don't want to engage with this because, it's just going to depress me. And, they were so powerless and they didn't have any agency. And so you don't want to sit with it, right? But then when you actually sit with it, and you learn more about it, I think it complicates our ideas about the kinds of lives that our ancestors led, and I think it reveals to us that they were tougher and more resilient, and adaptable and clever, right, in ways that I don't think that we're necessarily aware of.
Thank you so much for that. Let's give that a round of applause. I see a lot of head nodding. Honestly, and my wife is right here, Maisha will tell you, I struggle with violence. I did not watch 12 Years a Slave. I really struggled with Django Unchained. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna read this book by Jesmyn Ward. They got me out here, up here trying to do this thing, whatever. Sis, you had us sitting in some pain. By the end, we get some hope. We get some beautiful hope at the end of this book, but there is a lot of pain, and I think that that's another lesson, is that you make us embody that, not only for Black folks, but for everyone else who's reading the book. And you do this through this vivid and palpable prose. Jesmyn, I don't think that there's a writer working today who paints pictures like you do. You make us feel it, smell it, you feed it to us, and it's just unlike anything I've read. So I learned in 5th grade that I was not a very strong reader. So since then, I underline, I mark up books, I even draw to connect to what I'm reading. And I did that with so many examples in your book that my hands started to hurt. I want to highlight one of these examples of one of your pieces, and it actually touches on what you just said. So we find our protagonist, and it's on a sugarcane plantation in Louisiana. In St. Malo, can you talk about who St. Malo was?
So St. Malo was basically he freed himself, right, from slavery, right? He fled, and he started a community out in the swamps. It was him and other, formerly enslaved people, right, who had freed themselves, who had fled slavery. And what they were trying to do is, out in the swamps in Louisiana, they were trying to build a self-sufficient community, right, where they, grew their own food and were completely, independent, right? And he went with other people in his community. They were they were on a trip. I forget exactly what they were doing on that trip. They were going somewhere, and it was I know they were going like either through Mississippi, but they were in Mississippi. They were in Bay St. Louis, which is the city my hometown is DeLille. It's on the back of the Bay of St. Louis. And Bay St. Louis, the town, is like right next to DeLille, right? Yeah. So they were actually in Bay St. Louis. Wow. And a white man, stopped them and was basically accosting them and demanding, that they let him know, what they were doing there and where they were going. And they got into an argument. And from my understanding, they were defending themselves, but they killed the man. The white man was killed. They killed him. And then I'm probably going to mispronounce this, but the Cabildo, which was the government at the time in Louisiana, got word that this had happened, and so they began to search for that community, right? That St. Malo started, and unfortunately, they found them, and they raised the community. They killed St. Malo. They killed other people in the community. Some people they basically tortured, right? They burned, marks into their faces. They hung some of them, just really violent and terrible. But then he has been remembered in song, I guess. Yeah. I'm assuming that the free people of color, but also enslaved people, this was they heard about what happened to them, and they passed it along amongst themselves. And so someone wrote a song. And so I included parts of the song in the book.
Yeah, and that's where we find We find Mary singing this song of St. Malo. Now, this is in Louisiana. This is a sugarcane plantation. Now, sugarcane grows in these tall stalks. It's very different than what we typically think of in relationship to plantation chattel slavery. So they're all starving. That's the other thing. No one has eaten anything. And I want to read this because this made me go, mm-hmm. Mary sings the last of her song of St. Malo, the man who led some of us to other worlds. Her voice lingers in the air, the crust of pie around the edges of the pan that we scrape to savor in the hot corners of the kitchen, the buttery crumb, rich in our mouths, but only enough to hint at the cinnamon, the nutmeg, the sugar we are sowing and watering and bludgeoning to green, to bristle skyward in the fields. The sugar one can smell when leaning in close to the verdant stalk, rich in the fiber, and how the stomach feels full for a moment with a quick inhale, full and ragged over leavings. So I do it now. Breathe in deep to pull that leftover sweetness from the air down deep into me, to cull Mary's honeyed song from the darkness into me, so that for one blink in the bowels of this rotten house, tenderness is a touch in my bones. So the note that I have here is, girl. So I have a very profound question to ask you about that. How do you do that? How do you do that? All right, so I was an English major. Let me give you a better. How do you distance yourself from the pedestrian descriptors to offer us something renewed, refreshed, so deeply resonating and challenging? How do you do it? Tell me.
So one of the things that I wanted to do when I, figured out that I was going to write a book about this enslaved young woman is that I wanted to crowd the reader into that experience, right? Because in part, I was inspired by Colson Whitehead's Underground Railroad, right? Which I read years ago, but and I loved all of it, right? But there's this certain part in Underground Railroad when the protagonist, this young woman, is fleeing slavery. She's on the Underground Railroad, and she is in this. She's taken shelter at this stop on the Underground Railroad in this house, and she's hiding up in the attic of the house.
Yeah.
And I just remember reading that part and having to close the book and put it down because I had never read something about an enslaved person that made me feel like I was in that space with them. You know what I'm saying? Like, I felt like I was, because in that segment in the book, she's hiding in the attic of this house. The house is on like a square, like a park, and she's looking out of the attic and she can see, townspeople gathering on that square. I think they suspect that it's been years since I read it, but my understanding was they suspected that, that she was somewhere in the area. It seems like, like they're violent, right? That if they find her, they are definitely going to enact violence on her, lynch her, right? And the way that he wrote her, how she felt, right? That she was like hot, that she was sweaty, that she was aware of all her bodily functions and not wanting to be in this place and panicking and looking out and seeing these people gathering and feeling this terror and this dread. I'd never felt that close to a person who was enslaved before in literature. And so I wanted to do that. Right, in this whole book. And so that's just what I kept in my head, right? Like the whole time that I was that I was writing it. That's why I made the decisions to write it in first person, right? To use a lot of sensory detail, right? But then again, I am a particular kind of writer, right? Like, I'm not your spare writer, right?
Clean as a bone sentences.
Right.
Yeah.
I love adjectives. I love adverbs.
Yeah.
I love figurative language, metaphor, simile. I love it. In part because when I fell in love with reading as a kid, that's why I fell in love with reading, because I like that stuff, right? So that's what I want to do in my own work. And so from the first draft through the 15th, 20th draft, I'm thinking about language the whole time, like every line, the whole way through the whole process. Like I'm paying attention to my language.
Yeah, I mean, it worked. You did well with this. Another thing, like, I'm a researcher, so I'm always looking for themes across, and there's dozens that you encounter across here. One of my other favorite things that you do in this book is one of my favorite characters, though we don't have her very long, is Mama, the mother. Can I read one more excerpt? Yeah. If you have your Jesmyn, open it to page 273, and when you found it, say Amen. If you have your Jesmyn, it's okay. I love this excerpt here. We're on the last paragraph on page 273. She calls her little one. She will always be with me. I know it through my gasping, know it through my grasping. I know that I will see the gleam of her in the pocked glitter of the moon, in its embered shine. Know I will see her in the shattered stream of stars across the molasses dark sky. Know that I will see her in the wrinkling of my hands, the whitening of my hair. After my last breath, at the end of my toil and my hours, know it will be her who will ferry me across the water. Mama. That's a snap moment. Y'all supposed to come on. I told y'all what to do when you heard something. Stop, Okay. Did you intentionally offer such powerful descriptors of Annis's mother as a testament to your own mother?
I think not only my mom, but I think like all the women of my mother's family. And in part because I'm particularly close to that side of my family, and so not only my mom, but my aunts, my maternal grandmother, all of her sisters. I grew up in this, again, small town called DeLille, and where everybody is sort of related to everybody.
Yeah.
I have a huge extended family. There are over 200 of us in my extended family, just on that side, just on my maternal grandmother's side. The women, it's funny because when I began writing this book, part of the reason that I wanted Annis to have, that strong, beautiful relationship with her mom is because I realized I'd sort of robbed all my other characters and all my other books of that relationship.
Oh.
In Where the Line Bleeds and Salvage the Bones and Seeing and Buried Seeing, right? The relationships between the children and their mothers, it's usually problematic, right? The mothers are absent or they're dead or they're there but they're neglectful or abusive, right? And that, I realized that's not true to my experience. And so I wanted, for once, to give one of my characters that experience, right? Something that was closer to my experience with my mom and my grandmother and all the women in my family.
Yeah, thank you for telling me. I was curious because I know how important your family is to you, and it emerges, in probably in how this book even came about. This book emerged from a tremendous point of grief for you, Jesmyn. And I'm curious, writing is already extremely, any writers in here? It's okay. There's more writers in here that are putting their hands up. That's what writers do. Writing is already extremely difficult. So what does writing through adversity look like at this level?
It's a lot about doing it when you don't want to do it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a lot. One of the earliest things that I had to figure out once I started studying writing, trying to like read as a writer and actually, write and move beyond saying I want to be a writer to actually being that writer, was that I had to develop a sense of discipline, right? Mm-hmm. And so I got to a point where it was like, okay, I'm writing 5 days a week, right? For at least, and I set a time limit for myself. So when I first started out, it was just 1 hour. Now, for the past, 15, 20 years, it's been 2 hours a day, at least 2 hours a day, 5 days a week. Nice. And some of those days are more uncomfortable than others, right? The beginning is always really hard because you don't know what you're doing. Yeah. Right? You don't have a good sense of the world that you're writing about or the characters that you're writing about, and so it can feel like a struggle, right? There's always this point in the manuscripts that you get to where you're like 2/3 of the way through it, and you think, oh, am I going to be able to pull this all together, right? Am I going to be able to wrap this all up and resolve everything, in a good way for the reader? And so you might feel some doubt then, right? Yeah. And so it's not always comfortable. And then, I write about difficult things, right? Like, Sing Unburied Sing, I'm writing about 12 and 13-year-old kids who are re-enslaved at Parchment Prison, right? Let Us Descend, I'm writing about, a young woman who is actually, enslaved and has to walk hundreds of miles, down into New Orleans, is separated by her mother, who feels a great sense of loss and sense of grief, and who's constantly wrestling with that, right? And trying to live in spite of all that, right? And that's hard, right? Yeah. And so, and then in my memoir, Men We Reaped, right? Here I'm sitting in Men We Reaped with because Men We Reaped is about my brother who was hit by a drunk driver when he was 19 and killed, right? And then he was killed in 2000, and then from 2000 to 2004, so one of my cousins died, and then 3 of my friends also died. So 5 young men who I was close to all died, back to back to back to back, during those years. And so that was all really difficult to write about, because here I am writing about this person who I love and who I miss, and I'm having to bring them alive on the page, right? And then sort of sit with their death, sit with their passing, sit with their leaving. So, that can be painful, right? And so sometimes that means I'm like writing through tears, right? Just wiping it away and typing. But I think, part of the reason that I do it all in spite of that is because I think in the beginning I sort of intuitively knew it, but now I really know it as I meet more and more people who read my books. People read my work and they feel like I'm writing their lives, right? Yeah. There's something about what my characters are going through, that they identify with, that speaks to them, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes it makes them feel less alone. Sometimes it gives them new ideas about how to understand something they're going through in their own life and how to move through this thing that they're going through in their own life, right? And so for me, like, it's worthwhile to sit with this painful thing, whatever it is that I'm working on, that I'm telling the story of, because my work, hopefully my work will reach, those people, right? And will help people to understand and to navigate whatever they're going through.
Oh, it's so powerful. It's so powerful. Thank you so much for sharing that. But so would you welcome us into your writing world? Like, I mean, you said you type, so that way I guess she types it out. Okay. Do you listen to music? Do you have do you need a window? Do you need tea? Like, are you out in the community? Like, what? Like, tell us.
Yeah, so back when I first started, I would, because, I was born in the 70s, right? And so when I come from a poor background, right? So I didn't have when I when I applied to colleges, I borrowed my aunt's typewriter in order to type up my admissions, like my essays for my for my applications, right? So anyhow, I didn't know how to type. And so when I first began writing, even in college, I would write it out, right? And then I would take because it was like, I did most of this on legal pads, right? And so I would take it and like prop it up on the side of the computer and then painstakingly like type it all out, which would allow me to edit it, right? So I didn't actually get my first computer until I went to University of Michigan at Ann Arbor to work on my master's in fine arts, to like work on my fiction. And then I was able to, take out some loans, get a computer. And so for a while, like I would write it out longhand, but then I slowly became accustomed to using the computer. And then I just transitioned into just typing it, right? So now I've been doing that for so long that I just type everything, right? Unless, because sometimes this happens, I'll have a revelation about whatever I'm working on, when I'm out in the world. And so I'll jot it down on like the back of an envelope or, a scrap, a receipt in my purse or something like that. And then I'll have to bring it home, right? And then type it up. But mostly I type it. I actually can't listen to music when I'm writing because I have to hear the rhythm of the lines and the paragraphs, and how that works. And so sometimes when I'm writing, I gotta read it out loud because I have to hear it. Because I'm always thinking about the rhythm, right? And the way that everything is, that it's all building, right? And the way that it's moving, the way that it sounds. I do drink tea. Okay. I try not to drink coffee, in part because I have an uncle who he used to bring me to school. He used to bring me to school when I was in high school, and he was like so addicted to caffeine. His thermos was like that big, right? And so I remember him, and he was a DJ on the side, and we would listen to a lot of Parliament Funkadelic on the way to school, but he would tell me to be like, never drink coffee. You don't want to get addicted to coffee like I tend not to drink coffee, but I drink a whole lot of tea. It has to be quiet. And as far as the time, I just get it in any way that I can. Like right now I have a 1-year-old, right? So it's hard. Sometimes it's about me waking up at 5 in the morning in order to get that time to work, right? I'm always really grateful when my kids go back to school because then I have time to work during the day. Although I'm a night owl by nature,
me too.
So it's hard, because then sometimes I'm just up at, midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, and if that's when it happens, that's when it happens. So I just get it in any way that I can
And you
and
don't
try
feel
to.
guilty about it.
Right,
You just do it. Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Just do it.
One more question. Are you in high school? Any high school students here? Any future writers among you? A couple? Jesmyn, what's your message to the next generation of folks that want to live this life? Last question from me, and then it's on to you all.
I teach creative writing at a university on the college level, and one thing that I always tell my students is in this industry, right? In this world, you're going to face a lot of rejection. That's just the way that it works, right? You're going to get a lot of people who are going to tell you no, right? They don't want to publish this short story. They don't want to publish this book. They don't think that your work will have an audience. They don't, it's not good enough. It's not polished enough. It's not right. Like, there are all these reasons, right, that they'll give, for that rejection. And one of the things that I wish my instructors had told me, but it's something that I had to figure out on my own, was that you can get hundreds of rejections. Hundreds of people can tell you no. Yeah. Your job is to do the work to be the best writer that you can be, right? And then to continue to put yourself and your work out there, right? To submit it, right? Even though you're getting rejection after rejection after rejection after rejection, because you have to find the one person that's going to say yes, right? All you need is one yes. And so that's what I want you to remember. You just need one person to say yes. And then that yes will lead you to another yes. And then that yes will lead you to another yes. And that's how you build a career. That's how you make a life out of this.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. Let's give a round of applause. So we just have time for a few questions from the community. Would anyone like to ask a question? We have one over here. Yeah.
Hi, Jesmyn. My name is Tiana Johnson. I'm a PhD student at Morgan State University. I'm studying English. Thanks. So you talked a little bit about the spirits in your novels, and I understand that you have a bit of a Gothic influence in a lot of your work. I'm really interested to know what was the inspiration behind Aza, the spirit, in Let Us Descend, especially in comparison to Given and Richie in Sing Unburied Sing.
Yeah, in Sing Unburied Sing, there are spirits that exist in that world, right? But most of the spirits in that world are ghosts. They were once human, and then there's the grandmother in Sing Unburied Sing. She practices hoodoo, right? And so she, there are lots of spirits that she sort of calls upon that are, traditionally sort of venerated in, African, traditional, religions, right? Or spiritual traditions. But for Let Us Descend, when I first started working on it, I thought, well, maybe because, Annis's grandmother is from Benin, right? And so I thought, well, maybe the spirits that, that appear in this world should be the spirits that are worshipped, or venerated in Benin. And so at first I thought that's what was going to happen. But then as I wrote, I thought it just didn't feel right. I was like, I think the spirits that exist in this world should be spirits that are born from that time and that place and like that mix of people, right? And then, too, I'd read American Gods by Neil Gaiman, right? I loved it, right? And I was like, I can't do that, right? And so I thought, these have to be new spirits, you know, they have to be born from this place. And so that's how I sort of discovered, I guess, the spirits that are born from that place, like the spirit of the earth, they who give and take, or like, Aza, who is this storm spirit, like the basic spirit of a hurricane, right? A tropical storm that sort of moves over the ship that Annis's grandmother is on as it is crossing the Atlantic. And so I tried to make these spirits new and like, I wanted to make them like reflect that specific place, right? That specific landscape, the South, in the 1800s. It's almost like I had to create a pantheon or a gathering, of gods or goddesses, yeah.
Oh, very well. We got another question. We got one all the way over in the corner next to Tara Pritchett.
Hi. You said that you write for at least 2 hours a day and at least 5 days a week. And we can see in your writing that you write very detailed and vivid, sometimes about extreme or, terrible topics. Does it ever take an emotional toll on you? And if so, like, how do you counteract that?
Great
That
question.
that is a good question. So as I said earlier, I cry a lot when I write. But I also, I try to do things that are good for me, right? Like exercising helps, good, right? Yeah. I also try to meditate, just so I don't know, can be more aware of the fact that, just because I'm thinking something, it doesn't necessarily, it doesn't have to, I don't know, pull me down or depress me, right? But then, so I do the healthy things, but I also, I know some writers, I have writers, friends of mine who are writers who are like, I don't watch TV. I don't even own a TV. I'm not that writer.
I'm about to say.
I own many TVs, and I watch all of them. I love, but I love movies. I love, I love television.
What's your show that you like? Go ahead, share it.
Now you want me to embarrass myself.
We trying to make you human.
So inside, I'm probably this on the outside too, but I'm a nerd. Like I love fantasy. I love sci-fi. So let's see. So I loved watching The Wheel of Time on Prime. That whole series. What else have I've been watching the latest season of True Detective. Because I like, that sort of like mystery. What else? I like when Lovecraft Country came out, I really loved Lovecraft Country.
That was
I remember like when the Watchmen series came out. I loved Watchmen. So yeah, I don't know. I'm all over the place, but I like TV because it allows me to just, I don't think about sort of what I'm working on or what I may be going through, but I'm allowed to like immerse myself in this other world that's just totally different.
Fantastic. Any other questions from the community? Got time for another one?
I'll take someone in the middle here.
Yeah, we got one over here.
Hi. So I'm trying to write a book right now about tracing the civil rights movement across parts of the South and the North. Specifically, I walked from Selma, Alabama to Memphis, Tennessee, which was about 400 miles. And I wasn't a very spiritual person, but along that journey, they came to me. And they came to me in the way of like spiritual energies. And at different points along the walk, some places they were a little bit stronger than others, like between Selma and Montgomery, following the original marchers of that walk. And so my question is, how do you encounter spirits? Are they always like ghosts, or they come as spiritual energies? And then how do you, end them?
No, I mean, for me, I think it's about making myself quiet enough to where I can feel them, so I feel them first, and then when I start writing, that's when I hear them. It's weird because I used to, and even now, like I stumbled across Annis when I was driving. And so I used to, I don't know, I guess that's encounter spirit in a way a lot when I was driving. I think because when I'm driving, I at the time, like throughout my writing life, I've done a lot of driving on a lot of long drives, 15-hour drives. A couple times I did the drive from South Mississippi to California, right? Which is like something crazy, like 20-something hours, right? And so I think doing those kind of drives allows you to get into this sort of space where you're aware, but then you're also not aware, but you're in this sort of medium space, right? To where you're able to, where you're able to just open yourself to something else, open yourself to inspiration, open yourself to having these spirits visit you, come to you. So that's what I think that's the first part of it for me, is always, even, when I'm sitting down in my, daily practice or 5 days a week, that practice of writing, it's about quieting myself and just listening, opening myself up and listening and feeling.
Yeah, like I was listening to a podcast where you were saying that, doing these mundane kind of tasks like really open you to new. So that's definitely coming through in your description of the driving. Any other questions from the community? I have posed all mine. Let's go over here.
Hi, good evening. When you talk about being open to rejection as a writer, how do you differentiate between how you reject your own work when you want to revise something and not falling into a trap of, I'm being rejected here, so maybe I should reject this myself?
That's a powerful question.
That is. I mean, it's something that I thought that I was done struggling with. But recently, I feel like I'm not, I have been struggling with that lately, right? Like this sort of doubt, I think, in the power of the word and in the worthiness of the kind of work that I do. But then two things happen. I mean, again, maybe this just goes back to me, like, paying attention, right? Because, so as I said, I've been struggling very badly lately, right? With this, like, just struggling with like my confidence, and I'm trying to work on a new book, and it's like pulling teeth every time I sit down, and I'm second guessing every decision that I make, right, in the writing process, and just like bearing a lot of weight in my work and just not feeling like it's good enough, right? And then I got nominated for an NAACP Image Award, so that was nice, right? But something that is, thank you.
Gotta get your outfit together now.
Right. But that felt particularly important to me because it felt like my people see me. They see what I'm trying to do. You know what I'm saying? They see worth in it, and they're recognizing it. And so that lifted me, right? And then I've done these like virtual visits with this book club at Parchman Prison in Mississippi, right, through Dr. Ebony Lumumba, right, she's amazing. And so she coordinates the book clubs, right, in Parchman, and she'll have me like, visit online, right? And I just did it like a week ago, right? And I was feeling particularly low before the visit. And then, I got on the computer, and I'm looking at them, and they're looking at me, and I'm sort of having trouble hearing, so I'm leaning forward, and they're excited, and they're asking me, like, they're bringing up symbolism and bringing up all these symbols, like doing very close, readings of the work and making me realize stuff about the work that I hadn't thought about, and then they kept asking me questions about spirit over and over and over again. The spirit's this, the spirit's that, the spirit's this, and I was sort of struggling to answer the questions, right? And then at the very end, one of the men was like, he said, he didn't ask a question. Basically, he was just like, he said, you're speaking to our spirits, That's why everybody keeps asking you questions about spirits. That's why it keeps coming up over and over again, right? Like, you are speaking to our spirits. And that, in that moment, it changed everything for me. It just lifted me right back up. I was like, this is worth it. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is worthwhile work. This is, I may, struggle and lose my way every now and again, but he's right. Like, that's for me in my career and the work that I do, like, that's what you want to do. You want to speak to somebody's spirit. You want to, at the same time that I'm writing what I write because I want you to feel less alone, I realize I want to feel less alone too, right? I want to, commune with your spirit and speak to your spirit and us have a conversation with each other because I want to feel like I'm not the only one, sort of struggling through this moment. So I think, I think I have to be open to realizing that and to noticing that and to listen to people who are taking their time to tackle my work, and to spend those moments with me, and they lift me back up.
Oh, beautiful. We got time for one short question. Last question. Who wants that last question? Let's go right here.
Hi, I enjoy all your books, read them all, but this one that we're talking about today, I actually listened to on Audible. So I was wondering, how was it for you to be the narrator of your own book? And follow-up question, are any of your books going to be movies?
I'll answer the second question first. I hope so. I would really love for somebody to make a movie out of one of my books. I'm not equipped to do it. I know that I've had people say, "Oh, you should do it." I don't have the know-how. I don't have the training. I don't have the bandwidth. I can't do it. But I really hope that someone else does. A couple of my books have been optioned for film or TV, but they haven't moved into the production phase yet, right? So Sing and Buried Sing has been optioned and Salvage the Bones has been optioned. They're being optioned right now. So I'm hoping that it happens, but then again, years ago, probably like a decade ago, Men We Reaped was actually optioned, yeah. And then it just never happened and it sort of fell through. So I don't know. I would love for it to happen because I would love to see it, to see my stories in a different form, like in a different, it's just, I think it would be a totally different work of art. And I would love to see it. Again, like I watch TV, right?
All right, you want to see your show?
Right.
Yeah, of course.
The first question, audiobook. Thank you for reminding me because I almost forgot. It was the first time that I've actually read one of my books. I've been the narrator for one of my books, and it took me around a week, and it was more work than I thought it was going to be. A lot of work. Because you have to read super slowly. Because if you read fast, you start making mistakes. And then it takes just as much time because once you make the mistake, at the end of the session, you got to go back and you got to reread all that and correct all the mistakes. So it took around a week. I think we were doing 6 hours a day.
Whoa.
I think.
You had your tea though, right?
I did. I had my tea. It was crazy because I was reading it in this, at this place called the 100 Man Hall, which is in Bay St. Louis. Nice. The 100 Man Hall, which was originally founded as a mutual aid society, I think, in the Black community in Bay St. Louis. And then it was also on the Chitlin circuit, right? So they used to have lots of musicians that would come through. But now it's like being revitalized and they're trying to bring it back. And so there's a building that they've built on the side of it that's like a tin shed, right? There's no central air, and there's just a window unit, right? And that's where I was recording it, but the window unit was so loud that every time that we recorded, that was the only place we could find to do it, because the first place that the publishing company had lined up for me to record it, they pulled out at the last minute. So then we ended up here, right? And so every time that I would have to record in the booth, we'd have to cut the AC off, sit there for a second.
No, that's Let Us Descend right there. That's the hell, inferno.
Right. And this summer, it was like during the month of August, basically didn't rain for the whole month.
That's not the work of the Lord.
And it was just hot.
that's the devil.
So yeah, I felt like, real life is mimicking some of what was going on. Let Us Descend, because it was definitely hot.
Well, thank you, friends. We have been blessed by this genius. Thank you so much, Jesmyn. I was nervous about meeting with Jesmyn, so I had a pre-phone call with her earlier this week, and I met her agent and her babies here as well. And this is really a dope, awesome person, just real chill. And she validated me when I was calling to check in about her. So just know that you spoke life into me. I've loved spending about a month with you in this book, in all your previous books as well. Jesmyn is going to be signing, so let's stand to our feet if you can, and just give her another round of applause and validate her.
Thank you.
right, thank you everyone for coming tonight.